Haiti is no stranger to tragedy. However, even by its standards, 2021 has been a truly devastating year. In early July, its president was assassinated. Then, in August, it was hit by a devastating earthquake, the second in just over a decade. However, behind the difficulties lies a fascinating story of a surprisingly old country. Hello and welcome. My name is James Kerr-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflicts, and the origins of countries. Most people know that the United States of America was the very first country in the Western Hemisphere to gain its independence. However, few are aware that Haiti was in fact the second. Years before Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, or Canada became independent, Haiti had emerged as a sovereign state. Indeed, it's been an independent country for almost 220 years, with 2021 marking the 230th anniversary of the uprising that would also see it become the world's first state established by former slaves. However, in the 2 centuries since it came into being, Haiti has struggled under periods of intense political unrest, foreign interventions, dictatorship, and even UN administration. The Republic of Haiti lies between the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, occupying a little more than a third of the island of Hispaniola, a territory it shares with the neighbouring Dominican Republic to its east. Haiti's nearest neighbours are Cuba and Jamaica to its west, and the Turks and Caicos, a British overseas territory, to its north. At a little under 28,000 square kilometres or 11,000 square miles, it's the 143rd largest of the 193 members of the United Nations. The population is around 11.5 million, putting it in 82nd place. Although Haiti was inhabited long before European colonists arrived, our story really starts with Christopher Columbus and his historic voyage across the Atlantic. On the 5th of December 1492, he anchored off the coast of an island known to the local Arawak Taino inhabitants as Haiti, renaming it the Island of Spain, or Hispaniola as it's come to be known in English. In the years that followed, the Spanish kingdom established a presence on the island, using it as a base to colonise the New World. However, as time passed, its value declined. By the end of the 17th century, the population had fallen dramatically, and parts of the island had become a haven for pirates. Meanwhile, France had also taken an interest in the island, and in 1697, Spain formally ceded the western third of Hispaniola to the French crown. Under French rule, the territory would prosper and become one of the wealthiest colonies in the Americas. By the late 18th century, it's estimated that 500,000 slaves were working on the extensive sugar and coffee plantations, often under the most brutal of conditions. However, tensions were already growing, not just between the slaves and the 30,000 or so white European colonists who controlled the territory, but also between the colonists and the 25,000 or so free inhabitants who were usually of mixed race. This came to a head when, on the 22nd of August 1791, a major slave revolt broke out. In an attempt to quell the rebellion, the French government agreed to abolish slavery. At the same time, and in an effort to bolster its position, it also took control of the eastern part of the island, which had now been effectively abandoned by Spain. However, the rebellion continued to grow under the leadership of Toussaint Louverture, a former slave deeply influenced by Enlightenment philosophy, who's now generally regarded as the founding father of Haiti. By the start of the decade, the former slaves controlled the entire island. But any hopes that this would mark an end to the conflict were short-lived. In 1802, France attempted to retake Hispaniola. Despite capturing Louverture, who would die in a French prison the following year, the effort was unsuccessful. Faced with the start of what would become the Napoleonic Wars in Europe, and already in the process of withdrawing from North America, in November 1803, the French army suffered a major defeat against Haitian forces. A little under 2 months later, on the 1st of January 1804, Haiti formally proclaimed independence. From the start, the country faced severe political problems. 9 months after declaring independence, the country's first president, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, renamed the country the Empire of Haiti and proclaimed himself emperor before being assassinated just 2 years later. The ensuing succession dispute saw the country divided. While the south became the Republic of Haiti, the north became the State of Haiti and then the Kingdom of Haiti. This lasted until 1820, when the king in the north died and the parts were reunited. Aside from the internal difficulties it faced, Haiti also encountered significant external challenges. For a start, France refused to recognise the independence of its former colony for almost 2 decades. In the end, it accepted it in 1825, but only in return for compensation would cripple the country economically for decades afterwards. While the other European powers would eventually follow suit, with Britain recognising Haiti in 1833, the United States wouldn't do so for yet another 30 years. Concerned about the implications of recognising a state created by former slaves, it refused to recognise it until 1862, when President Lincoln formally appointed the first US diplomatic representative. Despite its difficult start, in the last quarter of the 19th century, its economy grew and intellectual life flourished. However, by the second decade of the 20th century, the tide was turning again. As the economy suffered under a series of short-lived governments, American businesses on the island called on Washington to act. Having long harboured ideas of controlling Hispaniola, the United States was also growing increasingly wary of German activity in Haiti, especially considering the start of the First World War in Europe. Following the assassination of the Haitian president in 1915, US President Woodrow Wilson ordered the US Marines to invade, and Haiti was placed under effective US military rule. This would last until 1934, when, against the backdrop of the Great Depression and growing Haitian opposition, the United States finally withdrew. At the end of the Second World War, Haiti in fact became one of the original 51 founding members of the United Nations. However, its problems continued. In 1957, the country came under the rule of François Duvalier, more often known as Papa Doc Duvalier. Playing on black resentment of the mixed-race elite who had come to dominate the country and distrusting the powerful army, he instituted a dictatorship supported by his own brutal militia, the widely feared Tonton Macoute. When he died in 1971, he was succeeded by his son, Jean-Claude. Baby Doc Duvalier, as he was known, would rule until he was forced to flee in 1986, following a popular uprising. After a series of provisional governments, in 1990, Haiti held its first free elections in almost 50 years, electing Jean-Bertrand Aristide, a former Catholic priest, as president. While there were hopes that the country was now entering a new era of reform, Aristide's rule was extremely short-lived. He was deposed by the military after just 9 months and fled to the United States. In 1993, the sides agreed to a peaceful transition to democratic rule to be supported by a UN mission. However, the military refused to let Aristide return. With the United States threatening a full-scale invasion, the generals eventually capitulated and Aristide was reinstated. After standing aside in 1996, he was again elected to the presidency in 2000. However, in early 2004, he was forced to flee the country for a second time following massive anti-government protests that led to conflict between various groups. As the country sank into chaos, the Security Council authorised a major new UN operation, the United Nations Stabilisation Mission in Haiti, MINUSTAH. Initially established for a period of 6 months, it was tasked with promoting political reform, strengthening the country's institutions, and protecting human rights. In the end, it would eventually remain in place until 2017. However, any hopes that Haiti might now be on the path to recovery were demolished when, on the 12th of January 2010, the country was hit by a truly devastating earthquake. Measuring 7 on the Richter scale, the final death toll is estimated to have been anywhere between 150,000 and 250,000 people. In addition, hundreds of thousands of homes and significant parts of the country's infrastructure were destroyed. As a result, millions were left in need of emergency international assistance. And even now, the country is still dealing with the legacy of the disaster. Today, Haiti is widely considered to be the weakest state in the Western Hemisphere, ranking 13th of 179 countries listed on the 2020 Fragile States Index. By way of comparison, Venezuela, the next on the list from the Americas, comes in at 28th. Likewise, economically, it's in a dire state. According to the World Bank, GDP per capita comes in at around $1,200 as compared to an average of $6,700 for Latin America and the Caribbean as a whole. This is significantly below Nicaragua, the next lowest, on $1,900. For reference, its neighbour, the Dominican Republic, stands at around $7,300. Meanwhile, the country is still racked by political instability. Alongside persistent gang violence, which has seen thousands displaced, on the 8th of July, the country's president, Jovenel Moïse, was assassinated by a group of intruders who broke into the official residence. Then, to add to its political problems, Haiti has also faced the consequences of further natural disasters that have been made so much worse by the country's chronic poverty. As well as dealing with the aftermath of numerous tropical storms, including Hurricane Matthew in 2016, on the 18th of August 2021, it was hit by another major earthquake that's thought to have killed well over 2,000 people and destroyed over 50,000 homes. Having become only the second independent state in the Americas and the first country in the world to be created by former slaves, in the 2 centuries since it was founded, Haiti's been affected by deep political instability. While this has been driven by internal factors such as feuds between key personalities and tensions between the black majority and the mixed race elite, the role of external actors also needs to be recognised. France's demands for huge compensation from its former slaves, hobbled its economic development for most of the middle of the 19th century. This was followed by a barely disguised colonial power grab by the United States in the first half of the 20th century. More recently, Haiti suffered one of the most feared dictatorships of modern times under the Duvalier. But even after this ended, Haiti's continued to be riven by instability, an instability that's been tragically compounded by huge natural disasters. Even years of UN-led state building have seemingly failed to end the country's problems. Haiti is still the poorest and most fragile country in the Western Hemisphere, and by quite some margin. As a result of this, throughout most of its history, when Haiti has come to international attention, it's invariably been for all the wrong reasons. And yet, behind the headlines lies a truly fascinating and yet tragic country that's far older and far more significant in the history of state creation than many people realise. I hope you found that interesting. If so, here are some more videos that you might find useful. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.